Hello everyone and welcome to this special session as part of GTR Africa 2020 Virtual, which is a real treat for the week. We hear first-hand the latest on the plans for Africa's ambitious continental free trade area. The official start of trading in the free trade area was originally due to commence on July the 1st of this year, but in light of the current situation, this has been understandably pushed back to early next year. To discuss this, I'm hugely honoured to welcome Mr. Wamkele Mene, Secretary General of the AfCFTA. Wamkele was elected in February of this year, having previously served in roles at the WTO and in South Africa's Department of Trade and Industry. Welcome, Wamkele. Back to the point I made in my introduction, the plans for the setting up of the free trade area were understandably disrupted with the advent of COVID-19. Can you share some more details to what stage you got to on the plans before they had to be delayed?
Well, I thought we were quite advanced in our work of concluding the negotiations on market access, that is tariff reductions. And I thought we were quite advanced on the work in on rules of origin, which goes hand in hand with the tariff reductions. And then, as you noted, COVID-19 struck and we had to suspend our work for a few months. The work has now resumed virtually. We, of course, lost a good 2 to 3 months at the time when it was uncertain how the pandemic would unfold. We have since resumed work, and we are moving as rapidly as we can to ensure that we have, by the end of the year, that we have rules of origin in place and that we have tariff reduction formulas in place so that trading can start on the 1st of July, on the 1st of January 2021. And so that is our target date. The 1st of January 2021 is when we intend to start trading under the new rules of the AfCFTA, under the new preferences of the AfCFTA. So we've got about 2 months plus to finish the work that we need to do.
I guess as a follow-on from that, presumably those plans for delaying were made when the full implications of the pandemic were to some degree unknown. Now it seems that things might be dragging on. How confident are you of meeting that new date, and what sort of contingencies? I guess presumably at the start there would have been the hope that COVID would be reduced, but it seems like in many ways it's going the other way.
Yeah, well, this is something that the ministers of trade are discussing at the moment to make an assessment of how far we can go in the negotiations of the AfCFTA rules of origin and market access. The ministers will make a determination about, we don't want to prejudge anything. We want to work as hard as we can. We want to aim to finish all the work that we can between now and the 5th of December when the heads of states convene. And then at that point, the ministers and the heads of states will make an assessment about how far we have gone. If we have concluded our work, which is first prize, that is phenomenal. If we have not concluded our work, we will start trading on the basis of the then agreed rules, or on the basis of the work that is concluded at that time. So if we have concluded 85% of our work on rules of origin and market access, we will start trading on the basis of that concluded 85%, and we may have a built-in agenda of the remainder of the work. But our objective today, as I talk to you, our objective is to meet the directive of heads of states, and that is to conclude our negotiations on rules of origin by the time they themselves convene on the 5th of December. Where the pandemic continues beyond January 2021, we will have to put the necessary health protocols in place. This means both for if there are in-person negotiations, it means that we will have to have health protocols for those in-person negotiations. Obviously, if they are virtual, there's no issue there. But we will also have to talk to our customs authorities across the African continent if there is a need for the return of the types of lockdowns that we saw a few months ago. We would then encourage various countries that we should enable goods to transit through trade corridors that would be specifically designated to facilitate access to much needed public health medication to fight the pandemic.
It's very interesting. How concerned are you of losing momentum around the agreement, both in light of the delay, but also in light of the sort of more nationalist rhetoric we're seeing more globally when it comes to areas like free trade and indeed international collaboration?
Well, actually, on both counts, Africa has bucked the trend. There has been a very, very strong coordination by the African Union, a coordinated effort to fight the pandemic from in terms of sharing expertise. The heads of states of the African Union, on the advice of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, has provided expertise throughout the African continent to various countries because of unevenness in public health expertise. So the African Union has been at the forefront of that. Second, the African Union has, for some time now, has had a coordinated approach to resource mobilizations to fight the pandemic for COVID-19, a solidarity fund that has raised a substantive amount of money. So I believe from the point of view of Africa, we have seen a great deal of collaboration amongst ourselves. And as the African Union, we have been collaborating with the World Health Organization. So I think we here, you may see that in some parts of the world, there is a lack of global coordination. Certainly on the African continent, that has not been the case. This is also true for trade. We are even more determined with COVID-19 and the aftermath of COVID-19. We're even more determined to conclude and implement the African Continental Free Trade Area, because we believe that this is going to be the driver of Africa's economic recovery post-COVID-19. We don't really have an option but to aggressively implement the AfCFTA, so that boosting intra-Africa trade, and so that intra-Africa trade is again the driver of economic activity on the African continent and the driver of Africa's economic recovery. There may very well be some parts of the world where we see a rise in protectionism, where we see a rise in investment protectionism. We are doing the opposite. We are reducing barriers to trade, we are reducing barriers to investment, and we are reducing non-tariff barriers in a range of productive sectors of our economies by implementation of this African Continental Free Trade Area.
It's very interesting. I guess one of the key themes we're looking at throughout the course of our 4-day event this week is the talk of African economies moving up their value chains. How would you assess the progress made by African markets in doing this, and how important is the free trade area in this objective?
I think what we've learned from COVID-19 is that Africa's over-reliance on the export of primary commodities is obviously a weakness. We've seen global commodities markets being subdued as a result of COVID-19, and many African countries have suffered as a result of that. And that has compelled, or it should compel all of us to prioritize the acceleration of industrial development on the African continent. We should be compelled to prioritize the establishment of regional value chains on the African continent, so that we are more self-sufficient and less reliant on global supply chains, where we know now for a fact that where there is a severe disruption, this causes, once again, many countries in Africa to suffer greatly. So we need to really accelerate our industrial development, the implementation of our industrial development objectives. The policies are there, but they require acceleration in their implementation. And the African Continental Free Trade Area actually requires of us to do exactly that. In Article 3 of the agreement, the Secretariat, working with the state parties, is required to facilitate the establishment of these regional value chains to ensure that Africa advances in its capacity for productive manufacturing. It's not going to happen overnight, but we've got to start somewhere. And I want to note also that when we talk about Africa's self-sufficiency in terms of productive capacity and regional value chains, we are not saying that Africa should disconnect completely from the global economy and from the global value chains that exist pre-COVID-19. All we're saying is that there's got to be a much stronger emphasis by Africa on productive capacity enhancement and industrial development, manufacturing capacity to create jobs. And of course, in times of a crisis like a pandemic, so that we are self-sufficient enough to produce the much required medications for fighting the pandemic, in this case, to do so on the African continent.
Next question, I guess, is what will happen in practical terms when we reach January the 1st? Which countries will implement the deal? Which are at differing stages? How does the mix look, bearing in mind we're talking about a continent of 55 countries?
Yeah, the expectation is that, and this is a legal expectation, that all countries that have ratified the agreement are required to start the tariff reductions to allow goods to enter their market on the basis of the agreed reduced tariffs, to reduce the non-tariff barriers, and a range of other obligations that countries have undertaken in the AfCFTA. Of course, in practice, countries are at different levels of readiness to implement to start trading under the AfCFTA. That means that we will have to come up with mechanisms, very innovative mechanisms of, on the one hand, starting trading from the 1st of January 2021, but at the same time recognizing that the customs infrastructure, for example, may not be there on the 1st of January 2021. That means we have to think about how do we give credit to those exporters who have started trading from the 1st of January 2021. There's a range of modalities that we can deploy to still continue to give legal effect to 1st of January 2021, whilst we wait or pending the full rollout of customs procedures or the customs nuts and bolts that are required to make the agreement meaningful, commercially meaningful for our traders. So the trading will happen from the 1st of January 2021. We are going to proceed as directed by heads of states. And if we need to, depending on whether we've concluded our work or not, if we need to, we will devise innovative mechanisms, legal innovative mechanisms for crediting traders who have started trading from the 1st of January 2021.
What does the free trade area mean for Africa's economies in real terms? Do you view it as being genuinely transformational? What is the true potential?
The true potential is immense. You probably would have seen a World Bank study that, amongst other conclusions, that concluded that where Africa implements this agreement properly, fully, and aggressively, by the year 2035, we will see intra-Africa trade increasing to 81%. And that by the year 2035, we will see 30 million Africans being lifted out of extreme poverty, 68 million Africans being lifted out of moderate poverty. And we will see the gender gap in terms of salary being reduced amongst men and women who are involved in the informal sector and the formal sector as a result of implementation of this, an indirect result of implementation of this agreement. So it has the potential for transforming Africa's economic landscape and Africa's development trajectory. The potential is immense. And I believe we have to seize the moment. And I believe that all heads of states, certainly the heads of states that I've spoken to, understand this. And they are, in fact, as I said earlier, they are now even more determined with the onset of COVID-19. They are even more determined for us to aggressively implement this agreement so that it becomes the driver of economic recovery in Africa going forward from the year 2021. So the potential is, I would suggest, probably we have not had this opportunity, this window of opportunity as Africa since the end of colonialism. So we've got to get it right. And we now have 29 countries that have ratified the agreement out of 55 countries. We have 54 countries that have signed the agreement out of 55. The legal commitment is there for those who have ratified. The political commitment is there for the 54 who have signed. And so I think all of us recognize that we have an unprecedented opportunity to significantly advance Africa's economic development objectives.
Final question. What would be your response to those who are skeptical that this will actually materialize in the form that it's been hoped for?
Those who are skeptical, I would say to them, they were skeptical that the agreement would ever be concluded. We concluded in less than 5 years. We still have some modalities, but for the most part, the legal text was concluded. They doubted that we would ever sign the agreement. 54 countries signed it. They doubted that it would ever enter into force. 29 countries ratified it. It entered into force. They even said that even to prove to them our commitment to the AfCFTA and intra-Africa trade, they said, well, Africans should continue negotiating even in the middle of the pandemic, something that in most parts of the world, I'm sure would never be countenanced. So for us, it is not really about proving to the rest of the world that we shall do it, which we shall. It is for us Africans something that we have to do for ourselves, for our own continent. We have over 1.2 billion Africans that are waiting for us to make sure that this agreement succeeds, so that small, medium enterprises in Ghana can have an access to the markets in Kenya and up and down this African continent. These are the people that we are committed to ensuring that we get this agreement on track and that we liberalize trade in Africa, that we create jobs for Africans, and that we create investment opportunities on the African continent. It took Europe over 50 years, and somehow we are expected to get it done in less than 10 years. But we shall get it done, and we are committed to intra-Africa trade from the 1st of January 2021.
Many thanks to Wamkele for his insights there, and thank you to our audience for listening in. I think we're all excited to see what the coming months hold when it comes to this very important issue for the continent. There are various other sessions taking place throughout the course of today and over the next few days, so please try and tune into those, and also visit our various sponsors and exhibitors with plenty of excellent content and connections to be found there. Until then, take care and we'll see you next time.